On?
There
Yeah.
you go.
Oh,
There
there.
you're on.
On now?
You're live.
Okay.
You're a go.
Thank you. It is now 5:01, June 19th, 2018, and I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city is housing as its successor. May we have roll call, please?
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Ms. Gomez?
Present.
Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. This is the time and place for the general public to address the City Council on any item listed or not listed on the agenda per Government Code Section 54954.3. State law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. I do not see anyone in the audience that, or anyone in audience to address the council. Therefore, can we have a declaration of closed session items by our city attorney?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have just 4 items on the agenda tonight for closed session. Item A is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2 and pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 E3. The facts and circumstances related thereto are set forth on the agenda. Item B is existing litigation on behalf of the City Council. It is related to item D on behalf of the Airport Authority. Again, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and the case name and case numbers are fully set forth on the agenda. Item C on behalf of the City Council is real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, and the APN numbers and the negotiating parties are set forth on the agenda. To the extent there is a reportable action, we will either report it at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock meeting.
Thank you. We will now recess to our closed session, and a regular session convenes at 6 p.m. Sorry for the delay. We had a little discussion going on. But anyhow, it's 6:03. And today is June 19th, 2018. And I call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city is housing as its successor. May we have roll call, please?
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Ms. Gomez?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. May we have closed session items, declaration of closed session items by our city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had 4 items for closed session this evening. Item A was anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2 and pursuant to 54956.E3. The facts and circumstances related to that are set forth on the agenda. Item B was existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1, and it is related to item D on behalf of the Airport Authority. Again, existing litigation. The parties to the litigation and the case numbers are fully set forth on the agenda. Lastly, item C is real property negotiations pursuant to Government Code 54956.8, and the property location and negotiating parties are also set forth on the agenda. At this point, there is no reportable action with respect to any of the closed session items.
Thank you. We will have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be delivered by Brian Hurst of Life Church. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Police Chief Rick Bassinger, so please stand. He's not here. Do we have someone else that would like to lead us in prayer? Come on up.
Would you bow your heads as we pray? Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this day. We thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here in this assembly tonight. We thank you for peace, we thank you for liberty, and we thank you for freedom. We thank you for those who are our governing council. We thank you for our mayor and those who are assembled on tonight. We ask that you would grant them wisdom, insight, direction, on the agenda that is set before them. And we pray that all decisions that are reached, that are for the greater good for this great community in which we live. We thank you, we bless you, and we ask blessings upon this great community in which we live. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
This evening, we do not have any proclamations or special presentations. I will ask our city clerk to present the agenda to council and any revisions to the agenda.
The City Council of the City of Victorville welcomes the public's participation in tonight's meeting. Persons who wish to address the council on a specific item or any item that does not appear on the agenda are requested to complete one of the white speaker cards located in the council chambers lobby and give it to the city clerk prior to the meeting. The mayor will call upon each individual who has submitted a speaker card. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, state law prohibits the council from addressing any issue not previously included on the agenda. The council may receive testimony and set the matter to a subsequent meeting. Comments made during the public hearings, written communication, or public comment sections of the agenda are to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker or less, as deemed necessary by the mayor. Communications are to be addressed directly to the City Council. Individual comments to staff or members of the audience are not permitted. Any person or group who interferes with the conduct of a City Council meeting by willfully interrupting and/or disrupting the meeting is subject to removal. A peace officer may be requested to assist with the removal should any person or group fail to comply with an order of removal by the council. Any person or group who resists removal by a peace officer is subject to arrest and prosecution pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.9, Penal Code Section 403. Thank you for your cooperation. All documents to be considered for approval at this meeting are before the council. Following are 3 revisions that have been submitted for tonight's agenda. We have 2 addendums and 1 revision. Public hearing B3, there is additional materials added. Written communications D1, there is a revision just to the title. And then D16 is requesting a continuance. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This evening, I am going to be moving item E3, which is discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming City Council agenda. I will also be calling on this item at the end of our public hearing. We're doing this just to accommodate something that we need to do at this time, and I believe, Jim, go ahead.
And Mayor, Madam Mayor, I believe per the manual, you are allowed to do that as a presiding officer in consultation with the city manager, and I'm assuming the city manager is absolutely in agreement with doing that.
Madam Mayor, I want to ask the council to reconsider agendizing an item that was proposed and defeated at our last meeting. Since I voted against it at that meeting, it's appropriate for me to request reconsideration of the item. I would like to have a full and complete discussion about our decision to not issue a permit for the cannabis event at the fairgrounds. Three of us were criticized for making what appeared to be a closed-minded decision 2 weeks ago without a full airing of the facts. So in the interests of full disclosure, I'd like to agendize that discussion and ask staff and our police chief to provide all of the information we have about the costs and benefits of those events in the past, and it will give everybody who is in support of those events a chance to come and speak freely in public comment. And I would like to request a special meeting because we're probably not going to have a chance to have this happen until in time. I will be available Thursday evening next week, but I'm gone the rest of the time, so if you want me present, and I'd like to be present, Thursday would be the first date next week I could do it.
What date? Thursday.
28th? That work for anybody else? No?
Is that a good date for?
What about the July 3rd? What about that day? That would be our normal meeting.
July 3rd works for me. July 3rd?
We're
that
not
what you
having a
said?
meeting July the 3rd.
Good. Well, we could have a regular meeting July 3rd. Is that enough time? Well,
I am, because of the 4th of July holiday, I'm concerned that we may have some absenteeism and we should have a full council. First, I'd like to find out from the council, who's going to be available the 28th?
Do I have anything on my calendar for the 28th? Did you know it?
Keith, you're nodding your head no.
County conference?
I do have some personal family plans starting the evening of the 28th, returning late the 3rd. So I'll be out of town.
I'll be.
It ends in the morning, so you can be back.
I'll be back on that afternoon.
Oh, that's the conference, city-county conference, but that's Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, you could be
Well,
back
I'll
in
be
time.
back,
What about the 29th?
2 o'clock. Well,
It's a Friday.
we'll be here the 28th.
28th,
But Keith,
it sounds like 28th. For me, I can alter some plans. 28th, probably mid-afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I could make that work.
Special meeting?
I'm available anytime on the afternoon and evening of the 28th.
Afternoon, 28th.
I'm on a plane back from Lake Tahoe on that day, but
Well, I'm available on the 28th. I'm available on the 28th.
get back as soon as I can.
What's the latest time, Keith, that
I was 5 o'clock, 5 p.m.
would you be at 5 o'clock, you say, or you have to leave at 5?
I have to be at, my plan was to leave at 5 o'clock on the 28th.
Okay.
I can alter that plan if it's the desire of the council.
Okay, that 28th will work.
So we need a motion then to add this to the agenda of the 28th and have us call us. We can notice a special meeting, but we need to have a motion to add a discussion of the Chalice Festival before this council. Need a motion and a second to do that, and then we will schedule it based on your schedules. And right now I'm hearing 5 o'clock on the 28th works for
Make a
everybody.
motion.
I want to amend that motion to include action.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I didn't
Could be
hear.
discussion and action. That would be
Discussion and
fine.
action. That'd be fine.
Are you good with that amendment to the motion?
Yeah.
We have a motion. A second.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
So that meeting is scheduled for June 28th at 3 p.m. And it will be a special meeting. So there's no need for all the speaker cards then. Thank you
Unless-
so very much.
Unless people do want to speak tonight, they obviously have that ability, but
Is there anyone that would still like to stay for public comment at the end?
Again, that's on the regular agenda at the end, so we're good.
Okay.
And then you could ask the council members if there's anything else on E, or if they're okay moving everything else on E back to the end of the agenda, as is typically done.
Okay. Does anyone have anything now, or you want to wait until we get to the end to agendize an item? Or
I
do you wanna
prefer
do-
to wait until the end.
And follow the agenda guidelines? Okay, very good. So we will do that at the end. Thank you very much. At this time, we will be moving on. We do not have any appeal hearings, so we move on to public hearings. And the first item is B1, a public hearing to hear arguments for and against establishing industrial wastewater regulatory and treatment program permitting fees. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the Victorville Water District Board of Directors conduct the public hearing, accept the industrial wastewater pretreatment program fee analysis, find resolution number VWD 18-008 exempt from environmental review under section 15273 CEQA guidelines, and adopt resolution number VWD 18-008 to establish the new industrial wastewater pretreatment program fees.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff by council members?
Yes, for item B1. How would the sewer rate revenues be used to cover costs of maintenance and operation costs to the industrial wastewater pretreatment plant?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, to answer the question seems to be speaking to an element that's not exactly on topic with the item before you tonight. This item is particularly dealing with establishing rates associated with the permits required for industrial users out at SCLA that are actually connected to the industrial wastewater treatment plant. So this effectively, after a study, has established costs associated with monitoring and regulating and ensuring compliance for permittees, particularly Dr. Pepper, Plastipac, IAC, and FBOP. The question more directly was related to rates associated with operations, and that's something that we dealt with separately. In fact, we addressed that as part of the rate analysis that was approved at the last council meeting and is on your consent calendar tonight for second reading of the ordinance.
So on page 16, it says collection of fees from the specific users of the IPP reduce the burden of general sewer rate revenues that otherwise would be used to fund the IPP regulations and operations, and that was my question in terms of that.
And that's, again, speaking specific to the regulatory element of running the plant, a little bit different and distinct from the physical operations, which the physical operations include the use of energy to actually filter and actually clean water to a Title II standard. This has more to do with actually working with the industrial user, ensuring that through the monitoring process before it even gets into our collection system, by sampling and testing and actually looking at internal operational practices of the user. This is a different element than the actual treatment element.
And are the use of IWWTP and IPP used interchangeably? Because that's what it seems like it's doing.
IPP is industrial
Pre-treatment program.
program.
I understand what they mean. I'm just saying, are they being used interchangeably? Because that's what I'm seeing that they are, but they're
With
discussed.
IWWTP?
Yes.
IWWTP stands for the Industrial Wastewater Treatment Plant, so they're not used interchangeably.
And then page 16 reads, fee amounts are based on the amount of time spent by district personnel and our contractors in processing and issuing WDPs, engaging in regulatory inspecting and monitoring, undertaking any necessary enforcement actions and checking plans. So based on this information, aren't we going to be approving the Victorville City budget, allowing the annual table of organizations, salary schedules, and benefits that will take effect in July 2018?
I believe the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, so then if you notice, the following agenda has the item of the adoption that includes the sewer plan. So it appears to me like there's going to be a double charge to the residents of Victorville or the industrial users. See Resolution 18-061, SCLA 18-002, and VWD 18-009.
That is not correct. This item is not a double charge. In fact, the only entities that would be responsible for paying these fees under this particular item are the 4 dischargers out at the airport that are physically connected to the plumbing that leads to the wastewater treatment plant. Residential users in the city of Victorville do not pay this charge, as they're not subject to a WDP.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Need to
Well, I
reopen
need
the
to
public
open.
hearing?
Oh, it's a double, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I still need to open the public hearing. At this time, I open the public hearing. I do not have any cards for this item, so I close the public hearing. At this time, I can actually make a motion. We can make a motion.
I'll move approval of the item.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to item B2, a public hearing to hear arguments for and against the approval of a notice of exemption and award of construction contract for the Wells 127 and 134 pump to waste project. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the Victorville Water District Board of Directors approve the notice of exemption and award a contract to Shipley Construction and Plumbing in the amount of $227,527.50 for wells 127 and 134 pump to waste, furnish, deliver, and installation of water flush tanks to each, project BM 18-086.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, Brian, I understand why we want to have a flush tank. Instead of putting the water in our system. What do we do with the water that goes in?
It goes into basically a seepage pit, so it over time seeps into the ground. It's treated, and then the clean water just seeps into the ground.
But we fill it.
Doug Matthews could probably answer that better than I could. That's an operational question. I don't know how often we would actually flush the wells.
The wells usually run once a day. We don't cycle them on and off, and we try and run them off peak at night. So if you're looking at a well that, say, pumps 1,000 gallons a minute, and you run it for 3 minutes or even 7 minutes, you'll be putting anywhere between 3,000 and 7,000 gallons in the tank. So it would be anticipated that it would leach out by the next day.
Anyone else? Any questions?
Yes. For item B2, looking at page 35, what areas and locations are wells 127 and 134? Are they a part of WID 1 or WID 2?
Well 127 is near the intersection of Mojave Drive and Amargosa Drive. Well 134 is near the intersection of Palmdale Road and Cobalt, and they are both in WID 1, Water Improvement District 1.
And I'm looking at page 36. What is the purpose of the seepage pits? I don't know if that's relevant to Kennedy's question with the flushing, but you have specifically looking at the seepage pits.
Mm-hmm. Well, so basically what this does is it instead of just pumping the water, the flushing water that initially comes when the well starts, instead of it going into the system, into the distribution, it will go into these tanks, and it's just a better operational practice.
And you talked about there was an informal bid. How many types of, bids? This one is considered an informal bid. How many types of bids do we have, and why was this one chosen to have the informal? And does the city's municipal code or other regulations or law allow for a percentage to be considered an acceptable and competitive bid?
In our purchasing code, there's a threshold dollar amount that allows for informal bids, and this falls into that category where the dollar amount was small enough that it didn't have to go through the formal bid process. And I believe the threshold was $500,000. Don't quote me on that. I think our purchasing staff would know that.
No, that's fine. I just want to know if there's several processes, and you've clarified that for me. Water goes into a seepage that's creating and flushed between. How does that operate with the pit? Is that any relation to the pit when it's flushing? I'm connecting it back to Kennedy's question.
Yeah, it's basically it would flush through a pit or a hole that has gravel in it, and then it would seep into the ground.
Thank you. No further questions.
Anyone else? I open the public hearing, and I do not have any speaker cards. Therefore, I close the public hearing. Can we have a motion?
Move approval of the notice of exemption and award of a construction contract to Shipley Construction as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item B3, a public hearing to hear arguments for or against the adoption of the 2018-2019 budget.
Madam Mayor, if I might, before staff makes a presentation on this, the budget is one document that covers all of the different funds of the city, and in the past, we've had a separate budget for the golf course items, and while the auditors have now actually informed us that it's appropriate to include that as part of the general budget. So staff's going to make a presentation on the budget. However, any discussion and questions with respect to those portions of the budget dealing with the golf course, I would ask that we hold those to the end, and at that point that Messrs. Cox and Kennedy recuse themselves before we vote on any portion of the budget that actually applies to the golf course.
So,
the general discussion can go ahead.
Okay, for the
right
budget itself, except for the golf course. Okay, very good. Madam Clerk, please read the recommendation.
That the City Council, Board of Trustees, and Board of Directors adopt resolution numbers 18-061, LBT-18-002, SCLAA-18-002, and VWD-18-009, and thereby establishing the annual budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 and adopting the annual table of organization, salary schedule, and benefits effective July 1, 2018.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time?
Madam Mayor and members of the council, if I might, staff has before you a staff report. Of course, it has its recommendation to you, and the recommendations have been laid out. If you will allow us, we've got a much more brief presentation that kind of hits what it is you're approving as a council and also in your different capacities as the library board, airport board, and even the water district. Staff has prepared kind of a high-level version of what this budget is, what it does, and starting out, here we go. So with that, in a few of these slides we've seen, but we think they're important enough to bring back. And what you're being asked to approve tonight is a total budget in the order of $233.65 million. And in comparison to last year, that total expenditure limit is reduced. But the $233 million compares to about $231 million in total revenue, and that's relying on just over $2 million in unencumbered fund balance. This is a budget that includes capital improvements to the order of $21.5 million, and those are going to be capital improvements that we'll lay out later towards the end of the presentation. But that's everything from runway improvements to water improvements to sewer mainline improvements. But one thing that we highlighted before, and I think this is of value to the public as well, is when you see that $233 million and consistent with, I think, a general perception everybody has of local government, that you've got this infinite pot of money, or at least in this case, finite to the order of $233 million, which is a big number. You're responsible for managing that over 81 different funds. So that could include everything from enterprise funds to special funds, each having their own specific responsibility. So in large regard, you almost have to operate that amount of money spread over the 81 funds like 81 small different business operations. They are, yes. That is correct. So with that, and derived from that, one of the funds that one of those 81 funds that I think is most near and dear to your heart, largely because it focuses on public safety and is largely spent on public safety, is your general fund. And this summarizes what you have absolute discretion over with limited restriction as the other funds carry. And your general fund revenue this year is projected at $72.3 million with an expense of $72.14. So the net revenue is positive, not by significant amount, but it's certainly better than balances. Your largest source of general fund revenue is outlined. 55% of your largest source of general fund revenue comes from either property tax or sales tax. And as you can see, the largest expenses laid out, though larger in this upcoming fiscal year because of your one-time transition costs transitioning to city fire, police and fire make up this year about 62%, and you can kind of see the corresponding changes year over year. Total personnel, and I want to thank the staff, particularly the finance department, human resources department, and even IT department for having, there's just a lot of hands put into this effort. And we've been working on it for close to 90 days. So thanks for the effort. Thank you for the effort for putting this budget document together. We rely on, in this budget year, 424 employees. That does include the 60 positions for the fire department, new positions. But altogether you have, year-over-year comparison, 9 additions and 17 deletions of positions. This budget does include 3.8% COLA. This was something that was introduced to you at the last council meeting, and there's no other changes or salary benefits. The budget does require to work relying on a large repayment from the VEMIS Electric Fund in the order of $11 million, and that's a reimbursement for startup costs associated with the formation of the Victorville utility. And for those in the public that aren't totally familiar with the Victorville utility, we have a municipal utility operating at Foxborough Industrial Park and the Southern California Logistics Airport. Its customer base are all commercial industrial users. There's no residential customers serviced from VEMIS. And with that, the two service areas supply electricity to customers in those areas. We also addressed in the last workshop that a significant part of this is that there's no new litigation costs. We believe that everything that we've been dealing with that's been large spends in the legal category have been resolved, so this is definitely anticipating that we're not inviting or expecting any new litigation costs. One highlight that I wanted to do that I think was meaningful for some of the respective enterprises that you're responsible for is to kind of highlight them on their individual merits so you can see the functions, in this case, of the Victorville Water District. And in this particular case, the Water District enterprise is going to generate, is budgeted to generate $39.9 million in revenue. That's against a $44.7 million expenditure. It does include $8.8 million of capital, and it's going to rely on fund balance, unencumbered fund balance, to the order of $4.8 million. One thing that I did want to highlight in addressing the Water District budget is that we are, this upcoming fiscal year is year 3 into the current 5-year rate plan. You recall back in early 2016, I think it was March of 2016, the City Council adopted a 5-year rate plan that for the 16-17 fiscal year had a 0% rate increase, and then contemplated a 6.25% rate increase over the remaining 4 years of the plan. Being in year 3, that 6.25% is recommended in the rate plan to help achieve the need to not only balance operating costs, but also to maintain capital reserves, operating reserves, and also to fund the necessary capital to keep your system alive and operating properly. But before just assuming the rate increase, we certainly did want to make sure that we were on plan and still requiring it. Saying it differently, we wanted to make sure that we weren't overfunded to the point where we're operating in the upcoming fiscal year and not needing the increase. So what we did look at was net revenues projected, and we've identified that over the rate plan, we're tracking at $11.5 million higher than the rate plan, which sounds good. But we've also found that over the rate plan, the 5-year period, we're also projected almost $7 million higher on the CapEx, or capital expenditures. And then we're actually showing that our target reserves versus projected fiscal year end reserves we're short by about $4 million. But when you combine them all together, we're tracking right on plan from a cash perspective. So staff's recommendation is to stay the course with the rate plan and adopting the 6.25 or including the 6.25% increase in the upcoming budget. You also sit as the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority. This is a big number because it includes all of the funds of the Airport Authority, which the biggest of those are dealing with debt service, the repayment of bond indebtedness or bond obligations. I think the highlight here, without having to go into the numbers, is kind of what we've asterisked there for you. And it does show an unencumbered positive fund balance of the order of $6.7 million. We wanted to at least identify for you, not to get overly excited that that's freed up cash to perhaps spend on improvements at the airport, but it is identified so that you know that that's being used to pay interest, reserve shortfalls, and defaults. And finally, we're pleased to advise that based upon our projections, we're projecting that by June 1st, 2019, with the receipt of that period's ROPS distribution from the former RDA dissolution, that we will have brought forward and brought current all delinquencies on the bonds. So that default status, what we're projecting currently, should go away. This is just an operating perspective of the airport. That's just the on-airport side. And to show you that revenues generated from lease activities, landing fees, things of that sort are largely in balance with the operating expense. Highlight over the upcoming fiscal year, probably the two that I would focus on for this presentation, is that we are in the middle of the reconstruction of runway 1735. That's your primary runway. And we're reconstructing about 5,100 feet of asphalt pavement with concrete. And then a big save and important to the airport operation, certainly vital, critical from our perspective, was transitioning fire service from the county contract, and that's something we did negotiate, and we actually have gone through the RFP process and gone through the selection process. We're actually in the middle of transition right now and are expecting a full transition by July 5 for the aircraft rescue firefighting operation at the airport, which we're projecting would save operations about $900,000. Victorville Utility Services, certainly the negative number is there. It's a big number, but that's largely attributed to the repayment of the loan to the general fund. We have done a cash analysis to determine the ability to not only repay that, but make sure that we're not shortchanging the capital needs of the electric utility system. We've done that. We are projecting needs to upgrade electrical service to the airport. It's not immediate. It's not this year or next year, but we're definitely working akin to having a savings plan to make sure that there are upgrades as our demand for service at the airport particularly is continuing to grow. A little bit about the electric company. As we currently have it, there's 43 customers. There's a 66 electric meters, 52 gas. And we measure our capacity and the availability of power based upon your peak demand. And the peak demand, that's with everybody turning on all of their equipment at the same time. We're at about 15.9 megawatts, and we're operating off of a 33 kV circuit out at the airport. We've got some projected consumption there for you. That's 95,000 megawatt hours. One thing that we have done, and that's just to make sure, and it's not unique to the electric system, we've traditionally been having rates increase, certainly not at the rate Edison raises their rates, but we certainly have to raise rates to make sure our capital needs are met. So this electric fund, it's Fund 420, does require a 3% rate increase to try to keep pace with our funding of our capital needs. But in comparison, we'd like to benchmark against SoCal Edison, and we're still finding ourselves 7.5% less than SoCal Edison at both SCLA and at Foxborough. There is also a natural gas rate increase, and this is largely due to it mirroring the proposed natural gas rate increase that would be passed on to us, or that we're projecting to be passed on to us by Southwest Gas. A notable highlight in this budget is our treatment of the golf course, and we wanted to bring this front and center because the optics of the budget do change a little bit over the previous, and largely due to a recommendation from the auditor. The way our budget and even the way our CAFR has been reporting over the years for a reason unknown to me or your current executive team. The Golf Course Fund, Fund 400, is a receivable fund, and it's been tracking as a receivable fund to repay the general fund. Now, the golf course has been treated as an enterprise, and typically in cases like this, you create a receivable when there is an ability to pay. But I think there's a recognition, certainly, that the golf course has been operating no differently than really any other park that's in your park system. So the recommendation of the auditor this year was to, and we're satisfying the repayment through some of the refunding to the general fund, but is to treat the golf course fund and have it funded straight out of the general fund, just like every one of your other parks throughout the city. So it'd be actually coded to general fund. And one of the things that we did want to call out in relation to the golf course, because we're fairly proud of the progress that's been made, certainly over the last 4 years. I can remember dealing with the transition of the golf course from the previous management company to the current management company. And you were in a pretty dire situation, I would say. The condition of the golf course was not very respectable. We certainly had a loss of loyalty in the customer base to the golf course, and I do believe that has been regained. The course has been invested in over the last 4 years, maintained very well. and it's desirable again. And interestingly, during that course of time as well, we've seen a pretty dramatic decrease in the actual subsidy to the golf course. And we've put this chart here really intended to help illustrate the change over time and the reduction of the subsidy. So we believe the golf course as a recreational amenity to the community is certainly doing better than it had in the past. But one of the things, recognizing that if there's an opportunity to try to reduce even further subsidies, certainly it's been advised and recommended. We've taken the suggestion from Councilmember Gomez as to wanting to consider funding a study, which this budget does have included in the golf course budget, an amount to study the formation of either a CFD or assessment district so that there's a supplemental form of revenue that can be generated from the properties surrounding the golf course that benefit from that as being a amenity close to their residence. Bear with me. Next slide, please. The next slide, and this is here because the optics have changed to where you had previously been able to see the golf course separately in its own fund, and you'll still be able to identify it differently by code, but it will be under the general fund, commingled with the rest of the park system. One of the things that we did want to identify and bring to your attention is how the golf course compares to all the other parks. And you know, as we view parks and the management of parks, we like to believe that we're offering a park system really designed to meet the variety of recreational needs of our very broad demographic of population base. So with that, each of these parks kind of serve different purposes, but all together they're very similarly drawing off the general fund to subsidize the O&M. And one of the things that we found interesting is, in the case of the golf course, it's not the most subsidized park in your park system. And certainly comparing it to Hook, you'll see some difference there. And a large reason why the golf course subsidy is at the level that it is and reducing is because it also has the best opportunity to generate a revenue. And as the customer base increases to where there's increased number of rounds, increased number of play, that actually has the opportunity, creates an opportunity to reduce that subsidy even further. So saying it differently, the golf course has the best revenue potential of any of your parks to be able to reduce the subsidy. There's a number of parks on this slide where you have zero ability really to reduce the subsidy unless you cut services. And then highlighting the golf course again, you know, and I think one of the things we want to do is show the variety of different things that are offered at the golf course. The management company that is out there is actually looking to appeal to a broader base by introducing new concepts such as foot golf, which actually kind of, I think, appeals to those that are recreationally involved in the soccer community. And that's by actually helping integrate the golf course into a golf course that requires no golf clubs, but instead a soccer ball. But I think equally as important is just to show the variety of different demographic. It's a facility that's heavily used by youth. We have a number of high school programs in the high desert that rely on Green Tree to host their recreational and competitive match opportunities, but you've got a very broad senior population as well relying on the golf course. So it's got a broad spectrum of customer base that, based upon the increasing number of rounds driving through that facility, we believe it's in increasing demand and a valued recreational amenity to the community. So why the focus on the golf course? Certainly we've talked about the optics in using the recommendation of the auditor to change how we account for the expenditures. But being more specific to how we vote on this item, because there are two council members that are required to abstain because they live on or close to the golf course. Because there's a government code provision 36936, it requires 3 votes. So absent the 2 abstaining members, we need a unanimous 3-0 vote from this council. And this is something that we actually addressed with you last month, maybe 2 months ago, when we were trying to correct some of the budgeting issues before we close out this current fiscal year. But equally important is the fact that this facility, along with a number of other facilities, including fire stations, including City Hall, are actually collateralized to secure certain lease revenue bonds that the city had issued related to its utility operations and the startup of the utility operations, bonds in the order of almost $52 million. And because they are security, there are legal operating covenants required to actually operate and maintain these facilities so as the value of those facilities don't get diminished. And then finally, there's a management contract that currently has a term that needs to be respected as well. So staff is concerned that absent a 3-0 vote, there could be a meaningful impairment to those contracts, which could actually introduce legal consequence to the city and perhaps even bring legal action. So staff certainly wants to advise the council of that before it makes a decision tonight. As we move on, fire transition, we have covered that quite a bit. I think most meaningful in the last couple of weeks is we feel comfortable, confident now with both ourselves as a city and the County Board of Supervisors last week having approved a 9-month extension to our transition of fire services. So officially, March 30th, 2019 will be the first day of the citywide fire service. We're going to be providing ARF at the airport, as mentioned, July 5th. So we're moving forward with the cooperation of the county. And I think there was some concern earlier this year that there's a potential for disruption of service on July 5. So our confidence is now with the agreement in place, we've got a mechanism to most smoothly transition from a county fire contract service to city service. And then finally, to close it out, we're going to jump into your CIP, and this is kind of a highlight list. It doesn't include all of it. All of the CIP projects are in the back of the binder that has been put together for you, but these are some of those that stand out to us as major capital improvement projects throughout the city. They include everything from Safe Route to School, which is largely trying to enhance everything from sidewalks to curb and gutter to putting in actual crossing safety protections at intersections or crossings to schools, reconstruction of roads, runway we talked about. Skateboard park is something that will start construction in this upcoming fiscal year out at Dorvis Davies Park. Sewer main structural repairs, those are largely resultant from the citywide inspection survey of all of your sewer system. Water improvements, gas switch, and I think that covers it. So with that, that was kind of our high-level introduction of the budget and to give you a better sense of what it is you're approving. Certainly myself and staff, both Sophie and George, are here to answer any questions you have, and the department heads are also here in the audience to answer the technical questions that you might have that we can't answer.
And again, Mayor Garcia, I would request that to the extent council members have questions related to the golf course portion of the budget, you hold off on asking those until we recuse members Cox and Kennedy, so that the questions now should be about everything other than the golf course.
Correct. Okay. I'm sure.
I'm sorry, the question now is what?
We can ask questions now.
All the questions regarding the budget should be exclusive. Those discussions related to the golf course, and we should have that as a separate discussion once you and Mr. Kennedy recuse yourselves.
Well, we have to set it on the budget question.
Right. That's what I say. Let's have a discussion on all budget questions
Discussion
right
on
now,
budget
exclusive of the golf course issues.
All right, thank you.
Excluding the golf course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I open the public hearing. And I do have several speaker cards. I will call them out. Dan, Becky, I believe that's how you pronounce it. After Dan will be Mike Cantonese. Okay, go ahead.
Mayor Garcia, Council. My name is Dan Bocci. I'm Vice President of Sierra Golf Management. I'm here today to speak to you on behalf of Sierra Golf Management and Green Tree Golf Course. Also with me is Mike Catanese, General Manager from the golf course, and members of the golf course staff. As you saw from Mr. Metzler's presentation, we arrived here in July of 2014 when the city had a very large subsidy of the golf course, and we were charged with bringing that subsidy down and also improving the conditions at the facility. Since that time, we have done that. As you can see, we've brought the subsidy down 44%, and as many of you know who have been to the facility, we have improved it tremendously. It is now something that the city of Victorville can be proud of to have as an asset to the city. We've also done this without raising any rates to the citizens of Victorville. We have not raised rates since we've been here, and we do not have any plans to raise them in the future. Like Mr. Metzler said, your other parks in your community do not have the opportunity to grow revenue. We do, and we're not done. Our goal is to continue to grow revenue and get the golf course to as close to neutral, cost neutral as possible. We don't want to stop. We want to continue growing rounds, growing revenue, and continuing to improve the property as we move forward. A common misconception is that golf is an elitist sport, and that could not be further from the truth. The people that you see at Green Tree Golf Course on a daily basis are Victorville residents. They are a diverse crowd. They are old, they are young, they are rich, they are poor, everyone in between. And it is a crowd of people that are mainly residents of Victorville, and the facility serves them and exists to serve those residents. When you talk about golf in the state of California, you have to talk about water. Our company operates 15 golf facilities in Central and Southern California.
Seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. You have to talk about water in the state of California. We've reduced water usage at the facility by and turf reductions in the amount of 20 acres. We've reduced in turf and brought down the usage of water. The food and beverage operation is constantly improving, and we have a strong relationship with the El Pescador family and plan on continuing to work to improve that relationship as well as the food and beverage facility. In closing, we feel that this facility is a tremendous asset to the city of Victorville and its citizens, and we are not done improving this facility. We think we can continue to make it better and get as close as we can to revenue neutral for the city. And I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Richard Matias will be next after Mike.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike Catanese, Madam Mayor and council members. I wanted to describe a couple of the programs that we've got going at Green Tree and let you know some of the plans that we have in the near future. The first tee is one of the programs that we will be instituting by the end of the summertime. It's a youth development organization impacting the lives of young people by providing educational programs that build character, instill life-enhancing values, and promote healthy choices through the game of golf. It's supported by the major organizations, including the LPGA, the PGA of America, the PGA Tour, and the USGA. The first tee has reached more than 9 million young people since its inception in 1997 and reaches youth on golf courses in high schools and other youth-serving locations. The first tee curriculum focuses on teaching character education and its 9 core values, including honesty, integrity, sportsmanship, respect, confidence, responsibility, courtesy, and judgment. Through this experience, participants learn to transfer the values of golf to everyday life. In addition to the First Tee program, we also offer free junior lessons every week for our juniors on Saturday mornings. And in addition to that, we also offer the most inexpensive membership program for juniors in Southern California. It's literally only $100 a year, and they get unlimited use of the facility at certain times of the day. So later in the afternoon is when most of our juniors tend to have this opportunity. So we do everything we can for the youth in this area at this time. We also host many fundraising events, such as the High Desert Marines, Barstow High Schools, Victor Valley's high schools, and we have many groups from down the hill that also come up and visit our fine facilities. North Orange County MAGA, which is a Mexican-American Golf Association, and to name that specific event, as well as many others. And lastly, the foot golf is something that we feel is going to introduce the golf course to a brand new sector of our community. And so we're really excited about this opportunity to have a soccer-related activity happening on the golf course. We know that the plans are to begin July 1. We'll have a soft opening, and we will have a grand opening of our programs once school begins later in the summer. Again, these are just a few of the programs that we've got going, and we hope that the city does consider this golf course to be the asset that we believe it truly is for the citizens of Victorville. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here representing Roots for downtown Victorville. I did see 7th Street on the budget, so thank you very much. I don't know if that's all of 7th Street or if it's just downtown Victorville. I mean, that's a main artery. Route 66 is known all over the world. You get tourists from all over stopping to take pictures. And also, Apple Valley kind of goes through there, so we don't want to look like crap to the city next to us. So I was just hoping that we put more consideration in the budget for downtown Victorville, and appreciate you guys' time.
Roy Olvera, and then after Roy, Oscar Tejeda.
Was that Rosie Olvera? Was that Rosie, Madam Mayor?
Roy Olvera. After Roy is Oscar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rosie Olvera.
It looks like Roy. I'm sorry.
It's okay. My name is Rosie Olvera, and I'm a resident of Old Town, and also a founding member of Root. And I just want to thank you and your team for adding a positive infrastructure changes to the budget that will impact our neighborhood. I remember 3 years ago when we attended the city's SOAR meeting, and Old Town was not even mentioned. So a lot of things have changed from back then to now. So I really want to thank you for your courage and your commitment to help us bring my neighborhood into the forefront, especially when you referenced Old Town last year to the budget, and specifically and the specific plant, and also the water pipes that were changed. So thank you for that. Along with my family and my Root fellow members, I have always seen the potential that we have in Old Town, and I'm really happy to see that this positivity has spread out throughout the city as well. We still have a lot of issues with safety that we need to address, and we have that in mind. But if we continue to count with your support in the adoption of the Old Town specific plan and additional opportunities for economic investment, as well as bringing our neighborhood together, I think that we can do this. So I just want to say thank you for everything you have done, and I know that we will continue to work together to make my neighborhood better. Thank you.
Thank you. After Oscar Tejeda, Christine Quick.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and city council members. I don't know where to start. I've been here so long that I've been off and on to this town, and I'm a little disappointed on the golf that you guys are trying to do with it. It was a mess when I went to high school, when we started going golfing there, and to this day, I don't see any improvements that I could see coming out of Miami, out of Las Vegas. I lived in two areas where we had golf courses. So currently, I will give you an opportunity to see if you can make it better. But right now, I'm hesitant to approve or ask you guys to approve something like this because of the way things are. But again, everybody gets a second chance, and I will give you that. The other thing that I have is I'm a little disappointed because I don't know where else to take my grievance when somebody here doesn't do what I ask. So where do I go from here when nobody gives back to me the results that I need to have? It's really my question. So I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me, because I do have other resources that I can call to get what I need. I'm a guy that likes to have things done and get it done correctly. So thank you for your time, and I really appreciate feedback from you people as soon as possible. Thank you.
Kristen Quick.
Christine Quick, a member of Root and a citizen of Old Town Victorville. Madam Mayor and City Council, I would like to thank you for your allocating funds towards the revival of Old Town Victorville. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards that I have on this item. So I will be closing the public hearing. Now we need a motion, but this is just the budget itself, or do we wait until after?
I would have discussion at the council level first, and again, I'd like to bifurcate the discussion and just have a discussion on all portions of the budget exclusive of anything pertaining to the golf course, and you can either do the golf course before or after, but have a discussion or inquire of the council if they have questions or discussions regarding anything pertaining to the budget exclusive of the golf course.
Questions regarding budget?
I have a comment kind of question in regard to the water. A year ago, we indicated that we were behind on the replacement of lines. I know we have a giant capital program. In fact, I think we have 2 major programs underway now. Are we back on schedule? Because I know we have large contracts and a lot of contractors are working on replacing water lines. This every year, are we getting caught up? Are we almost there? What's the outlook?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Cox, a quick answer is that most of the design projects for the 5 years are nearing completion. So we're in a phase now where we're going to see a lot more projects getting out to bid, and you'll see us catching back up. So we're on target by year 5 to complete all the capital projects at this point.
Thank you. That's the only question I had on the
Just want to make a couple of comments, and you might want to hang around, Doug. This council has made a very, very serious commitment over the last couple of years to do some capital improvements that are overdue. Village Drive being one of them, for any of you who live over in that neighborhood, to see what's going to happen there. But one of the things I'm pleased about is the amount of work we've been able to do in Old Town in their water infrastructure. Of course, the problem is once it's covered and buried, it's not one of those improvements you ever see, but it's one that the whole community benefits from. And some of that pipeline was so old and out of date. And there's more to be done. We've got a lot of water pipeline projects on the horizon. Part of what we have to be aware of in these enterprise funds is that the rates we all pay into those funds have to cover not just the operations, but those capital projects where we need to replace old infrastructure that's been around a long time and runs the risk of failing. Water systems, sewer systems, we're tuned in all of that. This last year we completely cameraed our entire sewer system, ran a camera through the entire system so we know where all the problems are. It was just a huge project, but it's told us where we need to make those changes. Anyway, I just want people to know that This whole area of capital improvements is huge, and it has immediate and long-term benefits to the entire community. And we neglect it today, it just gets to be a more and more serious problem down the road. So thanks for honchoing all that, Doug. Well, doing your part. Welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. What costs are being spoken of in Resolution 18-061 where it says, in order to recover said costs? Is that the $11 million repayment to the general fund for the startup cost alone or more?
I'm not tracking exactly where you're at. What page are you on?
So if you look at Resolution 18-061.
Specifically, Councilmember Gomez, what you're talking about is the fourth whereas on the resolution, where it reads, whereas the city has prepared a cost allocation plan pursuant to Title II in order to recover said costs, which are included in the proposed budget. So what this budget does is actually set the level of the cost recovery to reimburse the general fund for services provided to the to non-general fund funds.
FEMA's, right?
Well, it's actually all of the funds that receive service from the general fund, central services.
Maybe an example to help illustrate. One of the best examples is, say, finance department. Finance department provides, from a larger perspective, responsibility for effectively managing the money, the collective money, providing purchasing services. That among those 81 funds that we talk about, each of those funds use that general service of the finance department. So effectively the cost allocation breaks down proportionate shares to each of those 81 funds so that each of those 81 funds are responsibly paying for their share of the general overhead of the city, if that helps.
Then there are 4 budgetary funds explicitly listed. 1, the City of Victorville. 2, the library. 3, SCLA. And 4, the water district. And I believe you've kind of expressed that there's about 81 different funds, but I was looking at only 4 major ones appearing.
What's being represented by those resolutions are the various entities that the city council represents. It's not necessarily divided by funds. And so when you're looking at the water district, for example, as the city council serves as the water district board, all of the fund activity related to water and sewer activities, which may be multiple funds, are represented there by that resolution. So they're not necessarily separated by funds, they're separated by the governing body's representation.
Thank you. No further questions for that part.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the staff for putting all the work into this budget. Every year we get an opportunity to fix what ails us in a sort of way, but we can't do it all in one single year, unfortunately. And what you're seeing is fixes along the way, right-sizing things, dealing with salaries. After going through layoffs and where the city's been in the last 10 years, it's amazing. I feel a real sense of optimism. But when it comes to the water district, I mean, it's amazing how fast 5 years goes by when you're not only watching how the demand on services keeps increasing, but also where the revenues are. And I'd just like to thank all the past councils that have made all these decisions every year where we see incremental improvement throughout the community. And what I hope that adds up to is improving quality of life. And you may experience it. We've heard some discussion today about the upgrades in Old Town and some of the other areas. So while I appreciate all the work that goes into this, I would like to say, just going forward, just to offer a thought for staff and also our public safety folks, because I know how important public safety is to everyone here. This year we were able to look at the fire department. And the last few years we were very focused on the police department. And going forward, I think one of the things that we can all count on is growth. And I'm not saying like it was where we doubled in size the last 20 years or so, but in the next 20 years, I can imagine the demand on services will not stop. And we owe it to the residents to provide first-rate services. But when it comes to public safety as well, they really need the first-rate facilities to go along with that. So a lot of the things that we've been doing in the past was just, facilities and situations we've inherited. But if we were to add 10 more police as an example, we got to start looking at where they're going to go. And I imagine having a much different presence and reach and capability over the next 10 years to address both sides of the freeway as we continue to grow. So anyway, great job. And like I said, real sense of optimism. But, we can't fix everything at once, but there are things we can do from renovations of facilities all the way up to new stuff. And once we get a handle on that, I think we're going to provide those first-rate services and continue doing a great job. So thanks.
Thank you. I also want to thank staff and council members for a very successful year. I feel very proud to say that so much progress was made in this last year. And we still have so much more to go. I don't want to just echo word by word that everyone said, but nevertheless, I do want to thank staff. They work awfully hard. They're so loyal, and their main concern is just bringing forward, the best that we can to our residents. And as a city council members, that's our main concern. Bring the best that we can to our residents with whatever funds are available. And we wish we had more money. We wish we had more policemen. We had that we could provide more, but we're doing the best that we can. But nevertheless, I'm very pleased. I'm very happy, and thank you, everyone. So at this time, we are making a motion just for the budget itself, or we wait?
Yes, there are four resolutions in front of you. What I would recommend that you have a motion that adopts Resolution 18061 with the exclusion of any portion of the budget amount set forth in Section 1 that pertains to the golf course. So the $233 million, $164 would be reduced by the amount allocable to the golf course. And then that same motion then could also include the adoptions of Resolution LBT 18002, SCLAA 18002, and VWD 18009. So that it's clear on the record that you're voting on everything with respect to the budget for the various entities, with the exception of anything pertaining to the golf course.
Okay.
Without restating it, can I just make
That would be the motion, yes.
Is that your motion?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further comments or questions?
When do we get to vote on the golf course?
After this vote has occurred.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now I would request that Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Cox recuse themselves based on the conflict of interest that they own properties located on the golf course. And then that portion of Resolution 18061 should be up for discussion with respect to the golf course portions of the budget. It would be appropriate, Mayor, to ask if anybody has any questions with respect to the golf course portions of the budget.
I'm sorry, the resolution number, which one?
Resolution 18061 is still before
the
you
very
right now
first one.
as to the portions pertaining to the golf course, and it would be appropriate to ask if council members have any questions of staff with respect to the golf course portion of that budget.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, any questions of staff on resolution number 18-061?
As it pertains to the golf course.
As it pertains to the golf course? Question? No?
Just a comment, Madam Mayor. I would like to thank Sierra Golf Management. Since I came onto the council, they have done a tremendous job. I wasn't really aware of the issues prior to that, but all that it takes to run a golf course is significant. But it is something that has been part of the community for a long time, and I'm just looking forward to all those events that were highlighted earlier. And again, this is no doubt about it. We are proud of the golf course.
Thank you. So am I. Very proud to have our golf course, because that's the first thing you see when you exit the freeway. And without it, what do you see? Nothing. So, okay, at this time then, I ask for a motion on this item.
Yeah, we need a motion to approve the portions of the budget pertaining to the golf course.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 18-061 as it pertains to the golf course.
I second the motion.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
That motion fails.
I guess we're prepared to face consequences then. Lawsuits and a lot more. Mr. Messler, did you have any comments or anything that you want to explain to the public regarding our last motion here?
No, I think it's pretty clear.
All right, so then we will move on to consent calendar. In consent calendar, items C1 through C13 can be approved with one motion, unless there is an item that needs to be pulled for discussion.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Cox. Any further questions or comments?
Yeah, I have questions on several of these consent calendars, with the exceptions of C5, 6, 8, and 10.
C5 and C8?
C5, 6, 8, 10.
C5?
C5, C6, C8, C10.
Councilmember Gomez, are those items you are prepared to vote on, or those prepared that you want to hold off and have further discussion on?
Those one vote, I don't have comments or questions on.
So you're prepared to vote and make a motion on those 4 items?
Yes.
Move approval of consent calendar items 5, 6, 8, and 10.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
You totally lost me there.
You approved only items C5, C6, C8, and C10. There are questions with respect to all of the other items, apparently.
All right.
So for C1, there were many residents who came here to speak during the public comment, and we were dismayed to see a cancellation notice on the front door. In order to remain consistent with the need to establish cancellation policies that notify the public in a reasonable time, especially when the closed session was agendized 72 hours beforehand, and then unexpectedly it was canceled just hours before the 5 p.m. session. I want to make sure that was part of the record.
What was canceled?
The 5 o'clock closed session meeting.
Point of clarification, the meeting actually was formally adjourned at 5 o'clock, and appropriate notices of adjournment were posted and sent out.
So I was here at 4 o'clock, and I know I visited your office and made mention of the cancellation of the piece of paper, and then thereafter, half an hour, you showed up with a notice of cancellation. I just wanted you to know that there were people here from work that were planning on speaking at that 5 o'clock, and I just wanted to voice their concerns. For item C2, page 67, although the city states in its resolution that 27,309 notices were mailed, and 57 of those were protest votes, I'm so proud of my vote, and I would like for it to be reflected. The lack of clarity of the notices mailed out did not go unheard. The city needs to work on the language that is clear with those notices as an actual opportunity to submit a vote, so that when people come in on June 5th, when they did, which many did, they came and they voiced their concerns and dissent for that fee hike, and they asked for options. On behalf of the residents, I will continue to advocate for a clear and explicit language to become a part of the fee increases. Those concerns are now voiced. For page 68, what percentage of what dollar amount will be the minimum cash reserve for service operations, and what will that reserve be restricted if we so do restrict?
Which page are you speaking to?
68.
Which paragraph? Which paragraph, please?
Page 68. I'm looking at whereas, it's the third one, it says, and establishes a minimum cash reserve for sewer operations, and so I was wondering what the percentage would be for reserves.
So, yes, as established in the actual rate study and also in the staff report for those items, the reserves that we maintain are twofold. One's called an operating reserve, which is based upon 90 days of operating cash need. And then the capital reserve is based upon, I believe it's 3% of net asset value of the capitalized assets.
And then what newspapers did the city publish this information on May 25th and June 1st, 2018?
I believe the Daily Press, maybe city clerk or assistant city clerk.
Yes. What newspaper did you publish this information on May 25th and June 1st for 2018?
Valley-wide Legal Reporter.
Okay. This matter was contentious, and for that reason, I'd like to request of staff to consider to embed workshops in the notices along with the established language, hearing dates to be more inclusive and open to the residents' needs. For item C3, page 79, what was the Planning Commissioner's decision on this matter? Was it a recommendation or a quasi-judicial action?
Councilmember Gomez, the Planning Commissioner's action on the Desert Haven project was a recommendation to the city council. It was not a quasi-judicial action.
So this item met the Title 16 regulations and no conditional use permit was proposed?
That's correct. There was no conditional use permit proposed. Rather, it was a zone change, a specific plan zone change, and so it was an outright permitted use, not a conditional use.
And item C4, page 83. The loan amount, and this goes for the others, but I'm just going to ask it for C4. So page 83, the loan amount was $31,300. Where does the revenue get appropriated and into what fund? I know it's RDA. Does it stay there and get recycled, or does it revolve?
It is not RDA, it's Housing Successor Agency, which is actually a fund of the city of Victorville, but is restricted for housing purposes. And yes, it gets recycled.
And so in the absence of RDA funding, are moderately low to low income individuals at risk of seeking their home buyer's dream shattered because of its dissolvement, or does it continue to be recycled because it's not RDA and it's, you said, the housing successor?
I'm not sure if the home buyer dreams are shattered simply because of the RDA dissolution or because of the high cost of housing in California. But it does continue to be recycled, the monies that we are paid back.
And what was the percentage equity share based on the amount loaned, or the equity accumulated of the home based on the date of loanship? So what I'm looking for is, was it based on the loan that the money is being made on for equity purposes, or is it based on the principal and it doesn't really have to do too much with the loan?
So the way the equity share is calculated is you take a look at the original loan provided by the RDA in comparison to the total cost of the total purchase price of the home. In this particular case, it was 20%. And you take that 20% and apply it to the amount of equity. In this particular home, it was about $93,000, and therefore a $18,600 equity share is calculated.
Okay, and the MAP program makes the dream of homeownership a reality for the moderately low-income families and allows them the opportunity to experience the pride of owning their home. C7, I like information on Measure I that explains what projects the city may plan for in accounting. With any additions of a brief explanation would also help. I know it's based on Sandbagger, the new name of Sandbag, and transportations.
Were you basically asking what expenses are eligible to be funded by Measure I?
Yeah, like how did you decide these three matters would be Measure I versus another project?
There are published rules on Measure I expenses that San Bernardino County Transportation Authority has. And basically, they're road-related expenses. They're very similar to gas tax. Anything road-related is eligible for Measure I.
Thank you. And C9 for CCTV, was it only for 10 locations? I was under the impression that it covered 44,000 square miles, which translated to approximately 74 square miles. In other words, the entire city.
Is this item C9?
Yes.
This project has resulted from the CCT the inspection done over the entire system, which is the 450 plus or minus miles, and these were actual scope of the work was lining of about 11,000 feet. So these were in 10 different locations identified from the actual CCT inspection. Identified as high priority improvements required.
Okay, so then not the entire city. There was 10 patches basically that needed priority versus everything else.
In
Correct.
This particular case,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. And then for C11, that's page 195. Do you have the breakdown as to where each computer will be replaced and what departments will have it? Will this be immediate or will this take a process and time?
It'll take a process and time. We do have those, the list of those computers and where they're located. And based on the computers that get replaced first will be based on the age of those computers, and they all have specific locations.
And then C12, what does the representation look like when and if there's a major disaster? I think if you could provide an overview of this item in terms of representation. I wasn't sure if we were preparing for a disaster or it's the representation to be ready for a disaster.
We have to register certain names with the state so that when we seek certificate or seek any reimbursement after an emergency, that they have a listing of who the officials are at the city who are eligible to sign on behalf of those requests. The mayor pro tem, and a third council member is been requested, and then the city manager, deputy city manager, city clerk are all requested as well. So that's why you see those names listed.
So that goes to my next question on page 206. Was there a discussion or was it an administrative decision to ask the governing body representatives? And would you please explain how the public was apprised of this information and when city council decided on it, if that was how it went?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask that Ms. Gomez do her education time with staff on her time, not on ours. We have business to conduct in this council, and this is just wasting time on silly items that you could read the staff report and get those answers.
I
And
did
if
read
not,
it.
you do it with staff in the 4-hour-long meetings you already
I don't
with
have
staff.
4-hour meeting.
I'm going to well, I'd like to call the question on the remaining items.
Is that a motion to end debate?
Motion?
Is that a motion to end debate?
I make a motion to end
Second.
debate.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Ms. Gomez voting no.
I move approval of the remaining consent items.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries with Ms. Gomez voting no.
Now we move on. Written communications. We go to item D1, calling the November 6, 2018 election and requesting consolidation with a statewide general election. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council adopt resolution numbers 18-046 and 18-047.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Absolutely. Written communications for item D1. For the public's interest, would staff let us know
Please start the
when the
5-minute button.
when the process opens and closes, and what funding resources was used to pay for the election, which is about $63,000.
When the nomination period opens, is that what you're asking?
For the public's interest, would staff let us know when the process opens for the candidacy and when it closes, and what funding sources were used to pay for the election, which is about $63,000 for Measure K?
The item on the agenda.
Yes, it is.
Does
That's
have
a
anything
separate-
to
the
do with
agenda?
the item we're just dealing
Two
with?
different items.
Can we get to the item?
We are.
No, we're not. You're asking questions that have
On
nothing
item
to do with the
D1,
item
yeah,
on the
they
agenda.
they do have to do contextually with what the items are. I know you didn't read your agenda. I haven't had a response, so I'm still waiting.
The nomination period starts November 16th.
Okay, and when does it end?
I believe August 10th.
Okay, thank you. And what was the funding source to pay for the
Oh,
election?
I'm sorry, July 16th. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah.
What the funding resource for paying the 63, was it general fund money, enterprise funds?
General fund.
Thank you.
I do not have any speaker cards. Therefore, let's have a motion.
Move adoption of resolution number 18-046 and 18-047.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Negretti. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D2, and actually, item D2 and D3 can be voted on together. Item D2, confirming the annual special tax amount to be levied in Community Facilities District 01-01 for fiscal year 2018-2019. And item D3 is confirming the annual special tax amount to be levied in Community Facilities District 07-01 for fiscal year 2018-2019. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Mayor Gomez, if I might, I'm sorry, Mayor Garcia, if I might. If there are any council members that live in either one of the CFDs on these resolutions, they should recuse themselves. One is, I believe, Eagle Ranch, and on the second one, it's on the western portion of the city. So if you can just check real quick that you don't live or have residences in those CFDs, then you're good to vote on this.
I don't. I've lived in the same place for 50 years.
Nope, I don't.
Okay.
Ms. Gomez, where do you live? No. No answer.
See,
Do you?
Second one? All right, then if it's appropriate, we should have separate motions, and then on the second item, it'd be good for Councilmember Negretti to recuse himself.
Oh, okay. Which one are you on?
I'd like you to handle item D2 first and have a vote on that, and then for item D3, we should have Councilmember Negretti to err on the side of caution.
Okay, I need a motion for item D2.
I have a question for City Attorney. Am I correct in understanding that these assessments are driven entirely by the community service district that exists?
Correct.
We have no control over raising them, lowering them, changing them. They're totally out of our control. We are simply required by law to approve this once a year. Am I clear on that?
That is correct.
Okay, there ain't a lot to talk about, I guess, is there? I'll make a motion to approve item D2.
second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Cox. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now, oh, wait.
Now, on the other one, B3, is that where Mr. Negretti has to recuse himself for that?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So now we need a motion for D3.
I'll move D3.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Cox. Any further questions or comments?
Yes. Was there a 218 process for notices that went out on this item? And what rate is the bond being paid at?
Madam Mayor, I can answer that. So this is D3, correct?
Yes.
And so this district was formed in 2007, and so a Prop 218 process would have happened back in 2007. So it sets the rates out for 25 to 30 years, depending. And so as far as bonded indebtedness rates, I'd have to look that debt up and get back to you, but it was established back in 2007.
That's fine. Thank you. No further questions.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries with Mr. Negretti being absent.
Now, item D4, approval of award to purchase 2 vehicles and reject 1 bid under project numbers CC 18-070 and CC 18-070-1. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council and the Victorville Water District Board of Directors approve the recommended award to purchase 2 vehicles and the rejection of 1 bid under project number CC 18-070 and CC 18-071-1.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Yes.
Council members?
Where does the CDBG allocations get placed when the city grant itself money for the category? and I'm looking at the general fund graffiti division's CDBG monies being used for the cost of 2 purchases. Does that apply?
I'm sorry, can you
yeah, I'm not
can you
sure
repeat it?
I understand the question
I
related
don't-
to the items. I don't see CDBG funding this.
Yeah, there's no
So-
CDBG related to the purchase of these vehicles.
Okay, because I know we do general fund for graffiti division. The graffiti was granted CDBG funding, so I wanted to see if there's an association of it's using also for the purchases of the vehicle, or it's merely just for the graffiti removal, which
So
this item is not
the-
about the removal, it's about the purchasing.
This is, the general fund is funding this purchase.
Thank you, no further questions.
I do not have any speaker cards, therefore I need a motion.
Move approval of D4.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mr. Cox. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to D5, approval of award to Atlas Copco for the rebuild/overhaul of the CNG station compressor. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve the award to Atlas Copco for the rebuild overhaul of the CNG station compressor in the amount of $45,941.30 as budgeted for in the fiscal year 2017-2018 capital improvement project budget.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members?
If there's no question, move approval.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D6, payment to San Bernardino County Transportation for La Mesa, Nisqually Road interchange. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve Resolution Number 18-054 and authorize staff to pay the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority $1 million for the city's share of the construction cost of the I-15 La Mesa Road Nisqually Road interchange from the Road Service Development Impact Fee Fund Number 352.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members? None. I have no speaker cards.
I am really pleased to move approval of this item.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D7, agreement with MTGL Inc. for quality assurance and material testing for State Highway 395 and La Mesa Road Signal and Road Improvement Project. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve a consultant professional services provider agreement with MTGL Incorporated in the not-to-exceed amount of $50,000 for quality assurance and material testing for the State Highway 395 and La Mesa Road Traffic Signal and Road Improvement Project.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Council members? No? I have no speaker cards, so I need a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D6, lien agreement and security for improvements for track 17599 and release of existing lien agreement with CV Communities LLC. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Item D8, the City Council enter into a lien agreement with Joshua Tree Fund 22 LLC as security for the improvements required by Section 17-64.060 D2 of the Victorville Municipal Code for Track 17599 and release the existing lien agreement with CV Communities LLC.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members?
Yes, subject to confirmation by the City Council, a 4/5 vote of its next prior meeting. That's what the memorandum said, Did we have in November 2017 something that complied with the meeting of 4/5? Were we in compliance with that for the emergency?
I'm not sure what you're asking relating
For
to this
item D9?
We're on D8.
D8.
We're on D8.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Oh,
confused,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't have questions on D8.
I do not have any speaker cards, and I need a motion.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D9, ratification of water main emergency repairs near SCLA Hangar 756. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority Board of Directors ratify the water main emergency repairs near SCLA Hangar 756 in the amount of $185,743.91.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, Keith, this was we're ratifying it after the fact, and I know it's covered by the staff report. Could you give us a quick rundown on what happened here?
Yeah, there was an old water line under the ramp that had been accepted by the water district as a part of its system, and there was a mainline break. And it was a pretty significant mainline break, and it was largely attributed to the fact that I think the material was as old as 50 years, if not older, and it was old iron pipe, so it just had decayed over years and finally burst, and we had to come in on an emergency repair. Making it more difficult was the fact that it was under concrete ramp, which is about 18 inches in thickness. So we had to do a lot of saw cutting, a lot of excavation, and then, of course, repair, and then basically recompacting and rebuilding that section of ramp so that airplanes effectively can still run safely over the top of that pipe. I think the only unfortunate thing I would share with the council is that I would have liked to have brought this back sooner. This appears to have been an item that occurred back in October of 2017, and it should have pursuant to the code, and it was just,
Do we have any water lines under the runway?
not on. We're building one now, but we don't currently have any active. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we do.
I do not have any speaker cards. Therefore, we need a motion.
Move approval of
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments?
Yes, for item D9, subject to confirmation by the City Council by 4/5 vote of its next meeting, states the memorandum. Did we in November of 2017 comply with the meeting of 4/5 vote?
I believe that's what we're attempting to do tonight, and we exercise my administrative authority to undertake the improvements as an emergency, and tonight I think is what we're effectively seeking the 4/5 vote for.
Right, just to contextualize, it was the next meeting was supposed to be important for it to come back. I know you have authority for emergencies, but I was just making sure that you were complying within the 4/5 vote, or are we doing it right now, and that's what we're doing today?
We're doing it right
Okay.
now, and it was a mistake of staff that we did not bring it back sooner.
Thank you. No further questions.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D10, agreement with Twining, Inc. for quality assurance and material testing for the Safe Route to School project. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve a consultant professional services provider agreement with Twining Incorporated in the not-to-exceed amount of $50,000 for quality assurance and material testing for the Safe Route to Schools project.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members?
Yes, what includes with the quality assurance in this context?
The quality assurance is basically materials testing for different kinds of materials used. There's concrete used for sidewalk, curb and gutter, signal foundations. There are steel in the signal. There are a couple of signal, new traffic signal projects. It's also testing the compaction of the soil. So various kinds of materials, testing to make sure they meet our standards.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you, Brian.
I do not have any speaker cards. Therefore, we need a motion now.
Move approval of D10.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D11, City of Victorville Debt Management Policy.
Staff is-
Madam Clerk,
Staff
read
is-
the...
Staff is requesting a continuance, so we would like to just have a motion to continue this to...
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
No, 16, I believe, is the one.
I'm
that
sorry.
Yes, I had asked if one of our policies shouldn't be to have a clear and well-documented plan for repayment of the debt, and I don't see that. Is there any reason it was left out, or did oversight, or? you just don't
Not
believe
that
it
I'm
needs to
aware
be-
of, but that could be built in. George?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind explaining, just helping me understand the request. A specific plan to repay the debt?
Yeah, a specific plan of how we expect to repay the debt whenever we issue debt. Not just how it's going to be used, but what our plan for repayment is.
You're right. And so, as debt is considered, before you're presented with a litany of documents. And in those documents with each bond issuance is a very detailed disclosure document called the official statement. And in that document, for each one of those issues is a very detailed description of the entity's ability to repay the debt, the structure in which it's going to repay the debt, the type of the bonds that are going to be sold. At this time, the council is being asked to consider a debt management policy, which encompasses more of the types of debt that were allowable, for what purposes debt is allowed, and it actually would predate, and it's required to predate the consideration of issuing a debt. And so the formalized strategy on repaying debt is usually done at the time of the issuance through the official statement.
Really wouldn't be appropriate.
It wouldn't be appropriate to be in this particular document only because that for each issue, the strategy on repayment is going to vary, right? And so, I mean, we can make a global statement that if debt is issued, we have an obligation to repay it, but we can't issue debt without making that statement through the official statement of that issue. So it might be a bit redundant to include it in this piece.
Is that in the proposed debt portfolio, or is that a separate policy that the council adopts?
Well, it wouldn't be a separate policy. It's just once you consider new issues in that disclosure document, the official statement, you would actually commit to the warrants being made in that official statement, which would include how to pay the debt back and at what schedule.
Anyone else?
I move approval of item D11.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. Negretti. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D12, Annual Supply and Service Agreements renewals. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council and Board of Directors award contract renewals on the annual supply and service agreements to various vendors for the fiscal year 2018-2019 per the proposed budget on June 19, 2018.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members?
Yes. What is the city's current rating? Do we know? Current rating for debt bonds based on Moody's?
I don't understand the question. Is that in relation to this issue?
Yes. D11.
Yeah, we're on D12. Action was taken on D11. But I can answer the question back on D11, is that the city doesn't currently have a rating. Each bond issue outstanding has a rating. And so, but we're on D12 now.
George,
We're
we're
on
on
item
D12. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the total sum of approving the 67 vendors? You probably don't have it, but just for future reference, I would say to please add a summary field with values at the end of the vendor list and have a charge total of sums. And there's an example of this on page 250. And so I also want to thank you for adding the list. I know it was clear and it was easy to decipher the different contracts and agreements. No further questions.
And we have a motion.
Move approval of D12.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mr. Cox. Any further questions or comments?
Yes. On page 370, there's RSG. It shows $30,000 for the year 18-19. But if you pay attention to the next item, you're going to see that we have an amount of $40,000. Are they just separate things? Contracts? Yes. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Negretti, seconded by Mr. Cox. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D13, amendment to agreement for affordable housing compliance monitoring and reporting. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council approve Amendment Number 3 to the Consultant Professional Service Provider Agreement for RSG Incorporated for affordable housing compliance monitoring in a not-to-exceed amount of $40,000 and authorize the execution of the amendment by the Deputy City Manager.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Yes. How long have we had the contract with RGS, and is there reporting done to the department heads or managers for the measures that are performed during the contract between it's RSG, the 5 developments, and the city?
Councilmember Gomez, the contract has been in place since August 16th of 2016. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the second part of the question?
Yes. I know there's reporting, but I wasn't sure if the reporting was only to the department heads and to the managers. And if that reporting is done, was it to captivate the measures between either the 3 entities or just 2 entities?
If you're referring to the reporting that is mentioned in the staff report that RSG is conducting, they help actually compile an annual report that's due to the state. It's called an SB 341 report on our continuing housing activities now that the RDA is dissolved.
Right. Thank you. No further questions.
I don't have any speaker cards, so I need a motion.
Approve Amendment Number 3 to the Consultant Professional Service Provider Agreement for RSG.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
D14, purchase of 2 radar speed display trailers. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the Honorable City Council award a contract to RU2 Systems Incorporated in the amount of $25,404.35, which includes sales tax and delivery for the purchase of 2 radar speed trailers.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
I have a, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
I have a question for the chief. Is there any hope that we'll be able to use one of these on Mariposa?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So would you tell us more about that tow fee collection and how the funding process works? And the property once purchased, is it county or city owned?
Okay, first, once the property is purchased, it's city owned. It's purchased with city money. The tow fee, the traffic safety program, which we have in our budget, is funded by tow fees paid to the city, collected through administrative tow fees, and will vary from $100 to $150, depending on the vehicle code violation the vehicle was originally towed for.
Thank you. No further questions.
Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D15, payment of invoice to San Bernardino County Elections Office for costs associated with the November 2017 special election for Measure K. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
That the City Council adopt Resolution Number 18-062, approving an additional appropriation in the amount of $76,653 from the general fund and payment of the invoice to the San Bernardino County Elections Office for costs associated with the November 2017 special election for Measure K in the amount of $135,930.
Thank you. Any questions of staff by council members?
Yes, thank you for adding the explicit explanation of the costs. I've read them thoroughly. The one question that came about was with the projections that they were based. What were the projections based on? And because it was underestimated, so I was just wondering what was the thought process between the forecasting of the pricing?
I wasn't the city clerk back then, so I don't know.
Madam Mayor, I might be able to answer that. So when the budget is originally established for an election, we look at the previous elections and what the bills have been. So like, for example, looking back at items D1, where the estimate is based on previous similar elections, you see the estimate for our cost to be in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. In this particular election, there were only 2, from what I understand, measures on that particular election. So the county will divide that total cost among less participants, less agencies, and as you see, it resulted in a higher cost for the city in this particular case. Going into November, for example, by sharing the cost with multiple agencies going across the county, you'll see that the cost will be reduced.
Thank you.
George, just a question. If I was really unhappy about the outcome of the election, could I refuse to pay this?
The answer to that is the second you pass that
think that'll
resolution, the second you get that agreement with the county that they're going to place your item on their ballot, you obligate yourself to pay the bill. So regardless of the outcome, which we can always ask.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries with Mr. Kennedy voting no.
Item D16, is that the one that's
Yes.
will be continued to the 7/17?
Yes, can we have a motion to continue that item, please?
So
I can
moved.
have a motion? Yes.
Second.
Continuance.
Got a second?
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay.
I second it. Did you second
Okay.
it? I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D17, Victorville City Council Policy and Procedures Manual. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Any decision is at the discretion of the City Council.
Thank you. Questions of staff on this item?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have asked, since the last meetings, I've asked the attorney a couple of times about items that have occurred and asked that he research. He objected that it would be inappropriate for one council person to ask the city attorney to research items which this whole council may not be in agreement with. I agree with that. It should be a council action when staff and city attorney is going to spend time researching a matter. I think he has the matters, but I have a question on, can a council person leave the dais, become a public speaker, and then come back to the dais? That's a question I didn't think was allowed, but without spending a lot of time, I want to make sure the city council agree with that. Secondly, at the last meeting, I was told that during a public hearing, individuals can speak as long as they want to. I don't think that's true, and that's in conflict with the current manual that we have adopted. And so in that discussion, I felt that I remembered, and the attorney reminded me, that when we adopted the procedures manual, it was going to have to be reviewed and finessed from time to time. So my recommendation is that this be referred to the city manager and the city attorney, and that those items that have been discussed and the problems that we've incurred be addressed as a research item, and recommendations, if any, to come back to the council from staff and the attorney.
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mayor Garcia. Any further questions or comments?
What's the motion?
Motion is to have the city attorney and the city manager research some of the issues that have been previously raised and make recommendations as to revisions to the policy manual.
And that's also going to include when you were addressed by 2 council members to file things for FPPC in March, right? That's also inclusive?
No, that's not included. That's not on the policy manual.
So what is it that would be included again then, since you were...
It's a review and revision of the existing policy manual to make recommendations to clean up ambiguities and make recommendations to basically enhance the policy manual.
All right, thank you.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mayor Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item D18, cancellation of the first Tuesday council meeting in July 2018.
I'm sorry, I still have questions on item D17, but nobody asked, so I wasn't going to intrude.
Excuse me, did we call for questions at the end?
I thought in the beginning we did.
We did it, but
There was
Well,
a
you don't have
discussion.
to scold me, just go ahead and speak, please.
So, for the benefit of all, I'm going to request that any council policy handbook that is revised to show the changes not only with the language, but also be highlighted in the changes. And those examples I've noticed were on page 177. That's a perfect example of clarity when any changes are made. The changes that I would suggest are: 1, to ensure that votes are taken from each council member when there's Rosenbergs and parliamentary procedures, so that we can adhere to them. 2, to repeat the motion for clarity before a vote or its adoption. And 3, to have designated orders of representation rather than no representation at any city events. And that is all.
I can look at those and make recommendations as to yes or no in connection when I bring the manual back to you with the city manager. At that time, it'd be appropriate to vote on those items or not.
Good.
D18.
So I move on to D18. Cancellation of the first Tuesday city council meeting in July 2018. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
Any action is at the discretion of the city council.
Are there any questions of staff by council members?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, because of the proximity of this meeting date to July 4th, which is a national holiday, oddly, this year it's in the middle of the week, so certainly there are a lot of vacation plans with school being out. Staff has asked for your consideration. We don't foresee any items immediate that need to be attended to other than what will be addressed in the special meeting next week. And everything that is on our plate, we believe, can be handled appropriately at the second regularly scheduled meeting date in July.
Thank you. We need a motion for this, on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to public comments, and I do have some cards. Robert Harriman.
Good evening, Council. I got a couple things to say. This is getting ridiculous. Okay. Does she not get briefed before coming to council meetings? Because she's asked the stupidest questions. Where's her intelligence? It's definitely not in her head. Secondly, she's been going on Facebook and social media making accusations that are not true and acting in a bizarre fashion. I've had it. It's got to end. It's going to end. She's been served today. She's getting recalled. If you have dumb questions, would you please ask them when you're briefed? Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time. What rooms were the computers decided to go in? And what is the service in case of a disaster? Those are the stupidest idiot questions I ever heard. And they're probably posted on the walls of the rooms. Okay? So it's an act. Secondly, I think that's because you don't do any of that question. You've got somebody writing those out for you if you have to read them like that. So when you're briefed, that's why you're asking those questions, because the person that's giving you those questions wasn't there to be briefed also. Okay? I've had it. You've got to go. All right? You're a liar. You're an extreme mentally disturbed person, and I'll prove that with the videos that you're posting, okay? It's got to end. You're not representing my city appropriately. I hope you understand that, Mrs. The golf course. You just financed my recall. That's just ridiculous, okay? So you're recalled, lady, and you're going to be gone. Okay? And I promise everybody that. Okay? All right? Goodbye.
Deanne Hodgins, and then after Deanne, Dave Gross.
I have a couple of things also. This was in the paper this morning. I wanted to thank Council Member Kennedy, Mayor Pro Tem Cox, and Mayor Garcia for having the foresight to prevent this fate to happen to Victorville, and also that we no longer have to be no longer have to be worried about the control of county fire. We will have our own fire department. We will have our control over it. We will not have to be subjected to an additional parcel fee as well as an additional cost per month. Per year. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I have a comment to Ms. Gomez. It is really unfortunate that you lack the ability to understand the agenda, the supporting documents, and then conduct the business of this city in an appropriate, professional, and efficient manner. What a huge waste of time, and I am so sorry that our city has to have you as a representative. Thank you.
Dave Gross. Dave Gross. Here. Says local business, doesn't say. Okay. Maggie Martin. After Maggie will be Lori Nielsen.
Good evening, Your Honor, Council. These comments are about the debacle of last meeting, June 5th. During the public hearing on the water rate increase, a gentleman was speaking and a council member was responding to him from the dais. Ms. Gomez interrupted the gentleman and the council member, citing, quote, the Brown Act, mistakenly stating that the council can't respond to the speaker. Ms. Gomez was immediately and duly corrected. It concerns me that after a year and a half, she doesn't have command of the basics, specifically public hearing versus public comments, which take place at every council meeting. Additionally, it was painful to have to bear witness to the city attorney explaining things over and over to you, Ms. Gomez, because you can't keep up with or understand simple responses, and you get confused very easily. Let me explain to you why this happens. You lack active listening skills, which means before the person fully answers you, you are already formulating your next dozen questions, response, or bullying tirade you're going to launch into. Again, during the public hearing, Ms. Gomez took it upon herself to leave the dais and speak as a citizen. Her inane ramblings seemed to never cease, repeating herself over and over and taking a lengthy time to make, as usual, a point if she had any. More to the point, Ms. Gomez spoke as both a citizen and a council member. To what end? Just to make sure you get heard at all cost? Didn't you learn in high school or college how to interpret what you hear and form a concise question? As in, quote, get to the point, end quote, or get there now. It's ridiculous and rude to tie up and monopolize so much time. It's nothing short of attempting to control and manipulate the dais and now the floor. Just a, quote, hostile attempt to control everything and everyone, making sure you have the last word. Your justification for this is, of course, the First Amendment and freedom of speech, whatever. More likely, the only voice you really want to hear speaking is your own. I would like to point out your hypocrisy, Ms. Gomez. When you spoke as a citizen from the floor, you were offended by members of the dais laughing, snickering, not paying attention, etc., and pointed this out clearly by saying, quote, perception is everything, end quote. Really? You want that to be what's on your comment on your public record?
You have 30 seconds.
That's laughable and deplorable both at the same time. Take a good long look back at your time on the council and ask yourself this question. Have I, Blanca Gomez, as a Victorville City Council member, made sure that at all times my behavior, both during council meetings and while out in public, has been beyond reproach? You're right, Ms. Gomez. Perception is everything. How does your scorecard look right now? Let me answer that for you. Not good with this council, not good with this staff, not good with Victorville and the entire HD. That is why you're being recalled.
After Lori is Smitty.
Good evening. My comments are for Ms. Gomez, which I'm sure she will not listen to me. But 22 years ago, Ms. Gomez, I was given some very good advice by a dear friend who had served on the Hesperia School Board as I was a new member. And it was, do your homework. When you're given your agenda, go into your staff that you pay for and ask the questions. I believe that in Section D there are 18 questions. I don't see 18 of your constituents. So all I could go to believe is that you're trying to grandstand or that you just don't understand your agenda. You have staff, you have city council members, you have parents who have been here probably for, not the families, but your staff, probably since 7 or 8 o'clock this morning. And now it is 8:30. They're tired. They want to see their families. And you've taken that away because every one of these questions that you asked, you could have gotten the answers from any one of your staff members. And I'm sure that they would welcome you into their office and ask you what you needed to know. I think that it's inconsiderate. I think that you need to look at yourself, put yourself in their positions. Would you want to be away from your children that long? Yes, it's a choice to become a member of the city council, and you're expected to put in long hours. But I think you need to rethink the way that you do things. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thurston Smitty Smith, resident of Apple Valley and elected on Mojave Water Agency. 2 weeks ago, I came before you in an instance of Blanca Gomez filming our past mayor, Russ Blewett. Everybody knows about it. I won't go there. I challenge the residents of the city of Victorville. I would put up the first $1,000 to start the recall. It's picked up momentum. Sunday of last week, the Daily Press editorial board supported that endeavor, and then Mrs. Blanca Gomez posted a video on Facebook for a pretty much sympathy vote that she was being bullied. I want to make it clear, no one wishes any violence on anyone, but Mrs. Blanca Gomez said that her son was in school bullied. The facts are, from a police report that just came out, on June 11th, 2018, deputies responded to the 16,500 block of Green Tree Boulevard for a reported fight. Upon arrival, deputies located 23-year-old Emmanuel Gomez, Blanca Gomez's son, and its 22-year-old Israel Martinez, both of Victorville, near the curb in the incident location. During the investigation, deputies learned Gomez and Martinez had gone to a location to speak to a relative that was believed to be at the house. The person inside told them to leave. The person wasn't there. They were currently trespassing. They walked down the street, stayed a couple houses. They seen a car pull in the driveway. They came back to the residence. Two men began walking back down the street, returning to the house to follow the car. When they returned a second time, contact with another person in the house, an argument ensued between Gomez and that individual. Gomez and Martinez were told to leave again, a second time. They were trespassing. They continued to advance to the front door of the house. Argument became physical, and Gomez was struck in the face, causing him to fall on the ground, caused substantial multiple injuries as a result of the altercation, and was transported to a nearby hospital for treatment. Martinez was not injured and was found to be under the influence and arrested and booked into the High Desert Detention Center for drunk in public. I would like Blanca Gomez and the public to know that she's been served earlier with recall papers. It's up to you, the residents of Victorville, to push this train on down the tracks if you want to relieve Blanca Gomez from this position. She's continuously posting videos, challenging everybody. I want to make sure that everybody knows what she said on that video is not true. Police report is fact. Have a great night.
Those are all the cards that I have. So now we will move to our city manager's report.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we have a few items coming up. First, to announce that there's a residential landscape conversion workshop that's actually co-hosted with the Mojave Water Agency, and that's Saturday, June 23rd, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. here at Victorville City Hall, Conference Room D. There's also another co-hosted event with MWA on Saturday, June 30. Plants, Trees, and Shrubs workshop, also again here at Victorville City Hall. And then finally, a free event as the 4th of July, a fireworks show at the San Bernardino County Fairgrounds, starting at 9 p.m. The gates actually open at 3 in the afternoon. So that's all I have. Happy holidays to you all if I don't see you before then.
Thank you. Now we will move to item E3, discussion and possible action regarding items for the upcoming City Council agenda. I know we had part of it earlier, but now, is there anything else?
Yeah, I have a couple of things that I'd like to add to the agenda. So to agendize the use of the voting system to include transparency for viewers, because we've been using an antiquated system that excludes viewers from knowing what votes take place during open meetings. So I like to agendize discussion and possible action regarding council standard operating procedures with voting. And that's my motion.
Is there a second? There being no second, the motion dies.
The second thing that I like to add to the agenda is City Council and the general public have been discussing state land and the authority of the BCC. that has been given to the local municipalities, and it's been over 50% of the Victorville residents that overwhelmingly have voted for positions that the city has now quarantined. So I like to add discussion about the BCC and the city in regards to conditional use permits for state land that is held in the city of Victorville. And that's my motion.
Is there a second? There being no second, the motion dies.
And the third one is to agendize. We've had members in the city positions for over 3 decades who continue to do business as usual thinking, and so I like to agendize term limits for council members.
Is there a second? There being no second, the motion dies.
And then the last thing that I like to agendize is to continue the formation of a CFD with the golf course.
Is there a second? There being no second, the motion dies.
That was it.
Now we move on to E4, reports from council members. 5 minute time limit. Anyone? No? No?
Yeah, I have something I like to add for all the haters that are here with all those titles. I'm glad you're here because my purpose in life is to get you to talk about politics. So if it means that you have to express what you have expressed and it's prejudice, then so be it. That was my goal in life. So I've done it, and I've been in office for 2 years. I'm glad that I can have a community of members that actually come out and want to be engaged. The unfortunate thing, part of it is that we have people that are quarantined to attack a single person at times. At times it could be myself, at other times it could be you, at other times it could be other people. But I thank all of you for being here because all of us have the right under the Constitution to voice our concerns, our opinions, to call each other liars or truthful beings, which is everyone's right. My perception is not everyone's perception, and it will never be that way. So I'm lucky that I have a position right now, and there's a lot of you people that are very, very jealous. And it's very unfortunate because you have very good positions where you're at yourselves. And I admire the positions you have. But to be able to come over here and be able to say that you're jealous about mine in so many words is very implicit and it's very clear. So my position here, I was voted in, and I had enough to be here. I challenge each one of you to take that campaign and try to be seated and see how many people will elect you to sit on this very same positions. Maybe that should be one of the goals or your bucket list that you should have. Thank you very much for your time.
That's all that we have for this evening. Before the council, this meeting is adjourned.